Each time the North is out of power, of course, they are like a fish that is taken out of the water. I think that's the case of this Twitter handle user. And not just this man, we understand that they are always having quest for power. And this is a mentality of it's our turn to govern. And this is a mentality of it's our right to govern. I think that must explain the reason they are only the ones that spent all the years in military governance or rulership in Nigeria. Because how can you explain a situation where a Buhari just left office, spent 8 years, and the North is not satisfied? They're already warming up to say it's their turn, they want to have the power back. But I want to say that the North must wait for 2031. It is irrespective of their opinion. But let me quickly bring you the opinion of this man. Of course, he goes by the name of Usman Isiako. He said the Southern politics will backfire big time. You go further to say that the North gave Tinubu 63% of the manipulated votes that put him in office using the Muslim deception. You go further to say that he is now playing a Southern game when the North starts doing its own regional and tribal politics. The point here is, we understand that when it comes to election proper, you need every region, every state, as long as it is national election, to win election. But I don't want to believe that the North should be threatening any Southern person that they are the one that we determine who wins the election. Because even currently, we have a situation where the middle belt is already realizing that they are always being used by the North. A situation that have even made the middle belt to start saying after a certain turn, when it comes to the North, that they are the one that will take it. Even currently, we're even seeing some agitation coming from the middle belt saying that even in 2027, that the power should come to their region. But I understand the reason. They are using to prepare ground against 2031. Because this mentality of it's our turn, this entitlement mentality of the North, I think somebody should rise and let them know that they are not the owner of the country. Because if you look at the revenue that sustains everybody, is majorly from the southern part of the country. Whether you go to the angle of natural resources in terms of crude, you go to the angle of federal inland revenue service, we understand that a place like Lagos, a place like Port Harcourt, that is River State, are major areas that contribute largely to federal government coffer when it comes to, of course, revenue that accrues to the federal government through federal inland revenue service. When it comes to the crude, we know that the major states are Bayelsa, Delta, Cross Rivers, Edo, Ondo, Imo, Abia State. Of course, the 9 states in the Niger Delta. Those are the states that contribute when it comes to the revenue from the crude. I know that they have discovered crude in some other states, like Lagos and some other places, Anambra. But the point I'm making is the South brings the revenue that sustains everybody. Even if you look at the area of solid mineral, yes, federal government have started earning from solid mineral, but the revenue that accrues to federal coffers from solid mineral in terms of gold and other areas is grossly insignificant to sustain the country's need. So I want the North to realize that nobody owns this power. Everybody is important as when it comes to this democracy. And I want to say that when the South will finish their 8 years, let the power go to the middle belt. Angle of Kogi, Kwara, Plateau, of course, Benue. Let us have someone from that axis to govern the country. Enough of the corners, because they should equally have sense of belonging. But the ultimate thing is the South must finish their 8 years. I'm an advocate of that the South must finish their 8 years. We know that currently, talking about 2027, the man Tinubu is already interested in contesting. Obi is interested in contesting. The man, former president Goodluck Jonathan, is touted to be nursing ambition. The question is, at the end of the day, whoever gets this out of all the candidates from the South is the person that should govern. And not, this is without prejudice to the right of the likes of Atiku to contest the election. Because I understand that going by the constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Atiku is eminently qualified to contest the election. Because what the constitution says is that once you are educated up to secondary school level and you have no criminal record, that you are eligible to contest. So to that extent, Atiku is eminently qualified to contest. However, Atiku must wait for 2031 because that unwritten agreement, that tacit agreement that exists between North and South that enables the North to govern after the Southern turn must be respected. You understand that even when Jonathan wanted to contest in 2015, part of the reason the North vehemently opposed his ambition was because they felt the South was having too much and that the North should come back to power. And that is how what happened. They had their way. So, if Buhari haven't governed for 8 years, uninterrupted 8 years, it is expected that the South will govern for uninterrupted 8 years. And I want to believe that the North should understand this. And they should drop this entitlement mentality. Because this same entitlement mentality is one that made them to even did all they did in the past that makes things be lopsided in the country. Talking about how they created the states. Talking about how they marginalized the South in some of the areas during that era. So the question is, the North must understand that there is every need to allow that tacit agreement to prevail. But let me quickly say that we even need, so that this argument of it's my turn, it's not my turn, should be a thing of the past. We need to review the constitution, in my own opinion, to allow for a rotational presidency. A rotational presidency that will go around all the geopolitical zones. So that once your zone have governed, you know that it will take other zones to govern before it come back to your zone. I think that is the best way we can address this. Because otherwise, we'll continue seeing those who have governed jumping up to say it's their turn again. Because if you want to look at this unwritten agreement that has to do with zoning proper in a deeper sense of it, you agree with me that the eastern part of the country, the Igbos, are the most justified to govern. They are the most justified because since the inception of this national democracy in 1999, they have not governed. Because we understand that a passenger from the southwestern part of the country have actually governed for 8 years. A Jonathan from the southern part of the country have governed for, of course, for 6 years. And currently, the man Tinubu from the southwestern part of the country is equally in the saddle. So, if you are looking at proper microzoning in terms of the original agreement, I want to say that the Southeast is the most qualified to take turn or shot at Aso Rock. However, there is no constitutional provision regarding zoning. That is why I'm advocating that let us have rotational presidency entrenched in our constitution. Alternatively, let us regime the constitution to the extent of having cabinet system of government. And if we do that, I'm advocating a system where there will be single 6 years term And in that single 6-year term, we have a prime minister. I will have 5 prime ministers. Meaning, once a candidate wins, once a party wins the election, how they determine who becomes the prime minister at the first instance should be the region that gives the party that win the election the highest votes. So the prime minister that take the first turn to govern will govern for 1 year. After that first 1 year, step down, another region produce the prime minister. That other prime minister govern for another 1 year, step down, it goes to another region. It goes round like that across the 6 geopolitical zones. By implication, at the expiration of the 6-year term, the whole 6 geopolitical zones would have taken turn to govern in terms of prime minister. So that at the end of the 6 years, the whole government will exit power for a fresh election. That way, there's nothing like zoning, and every region is adequately accommodated in governance. I want to say that it's my personal opinion, and I want to say if we need to rejig the constitution to ensure that this argument of it's my turn to govern, I've not governed, this is the best way and approach to address it. Because if you do this, certainly no region will complain that it is being sidelined as we have currently. But I want to say in all honesty that currently the Southeast is being sidelined. I can confidently say that because they have not governed since the inception of this national democracy. And apart from that, you can see that in the Southeast, you have just 5 geopolitical zones as against the 6 in other geopolitical zones. For me, that is pure marginalization and injustice. That's why it's difficult to question those who agitate for secession, for their own sovereign state, because if every angle they look at, all they see is marginalization, lopsidedness against their region. It only makes sense for them to say we are not satisfied with the system. And I think the dissatisfaction is what is being expressed through self-determination, through secession agenda. That's why I'm always on the view that instead of using brute force to quell agitation, why don't we as a people look at the root causes of this agitation? Because you cannot be the child and ask the child not to cry. I think that's a situation when you try to use brute force to quell agitation. Because if Gowon and Co. had allowed Aburi Accord to stand, I don't think anybody would today be agitating. But I want to say that the Aburi Accord was never intended to divide the country. The only thing was that it was a pure confederation. A situation where the police would have been decentralized, the military would have been broken into regions. However, the center would have maintained authority or sovereignty over every region because they would have had the power to preside over issues of national interests, foreign policy. We could have even as well maintained national police, national military, but operate on a national level, at the national level, while the regional police, regional military operate at the level of regions. But unfortunately, Gowon and Co. did not see reason to allow the Aburi Accord stand. And today, all the problem Aburi Accord sought to solve is still plaguing us. We are still finding it difficult to come out of those problems. But I want to say that you cannot continue doing the same thing over and over and expect a different result. At some point, you need to step out of the box, think out of the box, and do things differently. That is why I'm advocating that there's every need for a review of the grand norm, the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Because how currently is not people's oriented, because it didn't emanate from the people. We need to get to a point where the people must come together and define how they want to continue being together. Because the Lord Lugard, who amalgamated Nigeria, did it out of his personal conviction. It was not as if Nigerians were convinced that they wanted to be together. That is why there's every need for people to come together and define terms upon which they want to be together. That is why I saw the 2014 confab as a perfect opportunity for that. But unfortunately, the Jonathan government did not show enough willpower to implement the result of that confab. Though some persons will say he didn't have enough time after the confab, but another school of thought will say that he was playing politics because he waited at the twilight of his administration to kickstart that process. However, we understand that that result or report of that confab is gathering dust in the share of federal government. But the federal government can decide to dust the dust and revisit that document. Or better still, if they are not interested in that, there's nothing stopping the government from convening a different or another sovereign national conference where issues that border on the unity of Nigeria can be discussed and defined. But let me say a very big thank you for your time. This is Salamida and Mr. Martin.